Hi, welcome everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are in the world. Thank you for joining us today on our webinar, How Conversational AI for Marketing and Sales Enhances the Digital Buyer Experience and Closes Gaps in Your Sales Process. We're pleased to be joined today by Forrester. I'm Rashmi Mittal, CMO at Conversica, and I'll be moderating and speaking on today's webinar. Now, I know we're all dying to dive in, but first let's go over a few housekeeping items. With regard to Q&A, if you have a question at any time during this webinar, I hope you flood us with questions. Please use the Ask Question box on your console. You can ask a question anytime during the presentation. Your question will be addressed during the Q&A session at the end of this webinar. If your question is not addressed, rest assured a team member will follow up with you with the answer. Secondly, we are recording today's session, and this will be sent to you through On24 following today's webinar. And feel free to share the recording with your friends and your colleagues and across your network. There are a few links in the related content box on the console, and so for you to view, including a link to the register for the next webinar in our Conversational AI series, Tech Talk, leveraging virtual AI assistants and conversational AI to enable buyers and sellers. And again, this is featuring Forrester. So think of this a little bit as a two-part series where I'm going to give you a really strong intro and overview on this webinar, but we've got another one coming up on June 10th. Where we're going to dive in a layer deeper into really how to enable your buyers and sellers and taking a look at your marketing and sales tech stack. All right, with that, let's go ahead and get started. First, I'd like to introduce our esteemed presenters here today. So joining me on this webinar, both from Forrester. First, say from the marketing corner, is Jesse Johnson. Jesse is a principal analyst in the demand and account-based marketing research department focused on real-time buyer enablement, conversational interactions, and emerging trends in program design and activation to fuel the revenue engine. As a practitioner, Jesse has more than 15 years of experience in both in-house and agency roles, leading key areas of demand creation, digital strategy, and content marketing for B2B organizations. And alongside Jesse today, we've got the sales point of view, which will be represented by Anne Slough. Anne has a rich history of directing senior level executives in developing their corporate strategies and performance improvement initiatives, especially related to sales, sales enablement, sales operations, and customer experience. And joined Forrester through the acquisition of Serious Decisions and prior to Serious Decisions, and held key consulting, business development, and leadership roles in which she partnered with organizations to improve their workforce and business performance. All right, ladies, I'm so thrilled that you're here with us today. Thank you so much for joining today's webinar.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Very cool. So we're going to kick off today's webinar here. I think I want to start off with Jesse. Jesse, you're going to kind of set the table for us. So I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to you.
All right. Thank you, Rashmi. So what do we know about our buyers today? From discovery to post-purchase engagement, empowered B2B buyers are really demonstrating time and time again an increasing preference for self-guided interactions. These interactions need to be connected intelligently. So we're not just looking at data, we're looking at how can we connect those insights that tell us a little bit more about our buyer and what they need to accomplish. We also are looking for interactions that are frictionless. We don't want to ask our buyer to repeat a lot of the information that they maybe already provided on a form somewhere, or they provided to another rep along the way. And we also want those interactions now to not just be personal, but to carry some immediate value in that interaction. So that value needs to take place or to come to fruition in context of who that buyer is, the role that they're taking in that decision-making process, what they're doing in the moment of that interaction, and what they need to do next to continue on their journey. So it's a big ask for both marketer and machine these days. And how are B2B organizations responding to these trends? One area that we see is certainly organizations becoming more conversational across the enterprise. So we have 34% of B2B organizations planning to adopt virtual assistants, which is actually up from 19% the previous year. And it's not just the conversations themselves, it's the capabilities that these organizations are investing in, not just the dialogue, but the insights and that ability to scale, that highly relevant to make all of the difference for the buyer. So how do we start to think about these trends, whether it be in automation, in artificial intelligence, in the ability to truly enable your buyer? How do we think about those in context of that conversation? So we start out with, no big surprise here, our audience. So to have a good conversation, we need to know who we're talking to, and we need to listen to what that audience is telling us. As we know in B2B, things are a little bit more complicated. We're considering multiple levels of audience to engage. So we have the account. We also need to understand the buying center. Underneath that account, they have their own goal. Within that buying center, we have buying groups as well as customer retention groups. And then we can get to that individual. And if we think about kind of the interplay with all things digital, what is that digital strategy? We were so focused on the individual in the past that there were times that we forgot that that individual actually aligns to a buying group, or they're actually aligned to this account that we're looking to engage. So keeping in mind the different levels of audience when it comes to these conversations in B2B. And so as we think about using the conversation to learn more about and understand our buyers, we need to start by getting an understanding of their persona preferences and needs. If we don't know that out of the gate, we can tailor that conversation to start to uncover some of those preferences, maybe even their job role or title. And we can use that information to further segment our audiences, at the same time aligning to the most appropriate conversation starter. So let's take a look at a couple of examples in action here. We'll take a look first at our goals. So what are we trying to accomplish? We need to think about our goals in terms of both the buyer and the seller objective. So we have different conversational plays that are applied to different use cases, but we need to start out with that conversational intent. What is that buyer looking to accomplish? And Rashmi, as we think about near-term goals, that conversational intent, our longer-term goals, how does this conversation support our demand objectives from the perspective of activation, acceleration, and validation of demand? What is the intelligent virtual assistant helping us to actually accomplish here as it relates to those goals?
Yeah, no, love to answer that, Jessie. I mean, I think really importantly, when you think about, when you mentioned even the audience before, and now when you try and drive kind of that next step in generating demand, it really comes down to being able to provide really strong lead engagement through that customer engagement process. And a lot of it today is human powered. And what we recognize is in that human powered customer engagement, to see if you can find leads that are interested in talking to salespeople or trying to build healthier pipeline. The problem that comes there is that a lot of times human customer engagement runs really inconsistent. And so what that means is that you can have like sales development teams, even inside sales teams, sorry, let me just get this to the right spot here. Even inside sales teams that are really focused on grabbing that inbound leads and turning those leads into meetings, and meetings resulting into really pipeline opportunities. But what we see is there's 4 common areas where human customer engagement or human powered customer engagement doesn't really work. It doesn't work around, that persistence, really being able to reliably do the outreach on a very consistent level. The second thing is to be able to promptly respond and make sure that when you do receive an inquiry, when leads are coming in, how quickly can your human-powered customer engagement respond to those inquiries? And third is doing it with a high level of personalization and politeness that's going to drive performance. And what this example here is really showing is that you can use conversational AI and intelligent virtual assistants to power trusted human-like interactions. And so, for example, let's take a look at what we're taking. Let's see what we're taking a look at here. Anything that you're going to see in this presentation where you've got the dialogue or the conversation in blue is represented through a conversational AI solution, in this case, through a Conversica AI assistant. Anything you see usually in gray or an alternate color is going to be the person that's actually responding back. And one of the things here is, if you just see that here we happen to name the assistant Rachel. Rachel's reaching out to Bill because the AI assistant itself can begin the engagement autonomously. Leads come in through a campaign, whether in your marketing automation or CRM tool, the AI assistant will pick up on that, and based on that campaign and how it's been configured, can really have a personalized outreach on that topic, on that subject matter. And so it will reach out and say, I noticed you downloaded a free software trial. I want to follow up to see if you have any questions. Would you like me to set up a call to learn more? And if you see that day 1 to day 22, what that means is that across that period of time, the AI assistant is sending out a cadence where each cadence or attempt is unique and personalized. This is not taking the same email and sending it out 7 times. This is each of those attempts is a uniquely generated, personalized message that the AI assistant is doing. And what you see is on day 22, Bill, in this instance, actually is now responding back. And we know it takes about 7 to 10 touches for people to really respond back. So you could see that a couple things is, yes, sorry to get back to you. I'm just trying the software now, and I do have some questions I'd love to learn more. At this point, the AI assistant is now comprehending what it has received. And it knows a few things. One, that this is a positive engagement in the sense that it looks like there is a next action that needs to be taken. And it knows it has something to do with connecting, I don't know what's happening here. Connecting with a person, and so what it's doing is now it's engaging the CRM. It's updating the CRM, saying, hey, this is a hot opportunity. It's also notifying the sales rep. On day 23, what happens is that now the AI assistant has responded back and said, hey, we know that Colby is your AI assistant, Colby is your rep, and then Colby is going to work with you to give you a call. And then also what it does is it pulls the phone number from the system of record, in this case the CRM, and saying, is this the right phone number to reach you at? Very human-like, very much so straight to the point, but very human-like. You can see on that this elicits a response from Bill because he is actively engaging. And Bill says, no, you know what? I'm actually working from home. Have Colby call me at this number. What happens at this point is that the AI assistant understands that this is a different contact information, will update the CRM record with that new phone number, and again, alert and hand off this lead over to the rep saying, it's your turn, go set this up. Now, in instances, we most definitely can also help you set up the meeting as well, and provide a scheduler so you can actually schedule the meeting. In this instance, if you want to hand it off to a rep for them to take it there, they can. And then a couple of days later, what will happen is that the AI assistant will actually follow up with Bill, because the AI assistant has set up the relationship with Bill, and said, I just want to make sure that Colby got in touch with you. Were you able to connect? And then Bill responds back, yep, we're set for a meeting next week. Thank you. This is actually a very real conversation, and this is a very real exchange that we have. And it's a couple of things to really point out is Bill has no idea that this is not a person. Bill is responding as if they think it's a real human on the other end. Now, the key to that is that you want to deliver a human-like, good customer experience, and that's the work that has to be put into the AI system to be able to do that, and it does that. It does that here really nicely. And so not only are you hitting the near-term goal of doing the follow-up and getting to that desired action based on what the user needs and wants, but it's also aligning to that long-term goal of making sure that you are following up with those inbound leads in a timely manner so that you can get a return on your marketing investment. Jesse, back to you.
Thank you. That was a great example there. And it's important to think about these conversations more broadly than a single delivery mechanism or channel. It goes beyond our web chat. It goes beyond email or SMS. A truly quality conversation that enables both buyer and seller will look across different delivery mechanisms, separating delivery channel from delivery or from that dialogue itself so that we can think more holistically about the design, deployment, even the optimization of these conversational interactions within the program and tactic mix in a way that is really audience-centered and customer-obsessed. So conversations then need to be integrated into our program design, our digital content activation, our orchestration of those tactics, as well as supporting infrastructure to ensure a truly conversational nurture experience if that is that next best path for the buyer. So a lot of decisioning takes place on the back end, in addition to what's going on within that dialogue. And I'm just happy that this day and age with intelligent virtual assistants supporting us along the way, these aren't rule sets that I'm going to have to write myself based off of all of the different conditions that we can surface within that conversation. So we have another really good example here of dynamic delivery of that content.
Yeah, and so what we're talking about, I think what was really important too on that flow, Jesse, is the fact that you had different communication channels that were being used at different times. I think one of the important things about conversational AI, especially when applied in marketing and sales use case, is that you're able to meet the buyer in their moment. And so in this instance, what we're seeing here is that you can very well begin a conversation on website chat, like people could come to your website and you could begin that conversation. And that's really great. Like website chat is great for that real-time engagement because they're in the moment on your website and you want to try and drive a few things, right? You want to help connect them to the information that they're looking for on your website. Sometimes it's hard for certain people to find information on their websites, helping them get to that, whether that's that case study or that demo or, hey, maybe that great Forrester webinar that we just had. But the second thing is if they're consuming that content, they're engaging with your content, which you want them to do, they may fill out a lead form. You may be able to capture the lead information through the chat itself. And so what you then want to do is understand how to then nurture. And so being able to do that, especially in B2B marketing today, email is still the primary tool of use, right, to try and drive that additional education and consideration stage. So email is great for that asynchronous engagement when you're trying to engage on the buyer's time, when they're trying to look at something and see if they're ready to continue and maybe actually connect with a person. So your delivery here, to your point, it has to be proactive and reactive timing based on that audience goals. You want to be able to have that dialogue that's connected across different delivery channels, and you want an experience that drives action and progression, which you have seen kind of not only in the last example, but also in this example as well.
Which brings us to our dialogue, oftentimes where people think that they'll start when it comes to conversational interactions, but we do need to consider the audience, the goals, how we're delivering that experience, and then we can start to think about that dialogue itself. So we're having unique conversations with unique people. And to do that, we need to think about the persona or the character of our virtual assistants and how they're going to be matched to our audiences and what the goals are of those virtual assistant personas. So we have a few examples for you here. We'll start out with KD. She's really focused on learning more about, in this instance, website visitors or even virtual event attendees. So she's looking to ask the right questions and provide guidance, almost a concierge service through all of the different content that audience might navigate either on the website or in a virtual event platform. So she demonstrates immediate value by answering those questions, and she's closing that conversation with a path into a nurture program. And then we have Max. He's a little bit more of a subject matter expert. He's triggered deeper in the funnel. His goal is really to help a buyer understand how a complex solution might work, with the outcome of automating the process of scheduling a demo. And finally, we have Stephanie here, and she's all business. Her goal is to engage buying group members that are connected to an open opportunity. So she's providing value and direction and helping to progress that overall opportunity to that next stage as she's connecting those non-human conversations with human agents at the end. So Rashmi, what are some of the ways that we can work with these virtual assistants in context of the full funnel?
Yeah, it's a great question. And because we're focused kind of on the marketing side of the house, I want to just take a moment to say, what are some of the pain points? Like, you might be asking yourselves, like, how should I apply this? How do I think about this? Well, let's first start about kind of where some of the pain, where you're seeing the pain and where some of those frustrations lie. And it's really looking at that top of the funnel. Sure, you can have unengaged website visitors, and you might want to use chat to be able to drive that. But there are way more use cases that you can apply in the top of the funnel. You can apply conversational AI to in the top of the funnel. But it stems from this fact that you've got all these different kind of categories of leads that are coming in, or different leads or buyers through your journey. So you could definitely have unnoticed leads, right? These are the ones that could be inactive, greater than 90 or 120 days. Maybe at some point, like 3 or 4 months earlier, they showed some interest, but then they went quiet. What are you doing to really reactivate those leads to get them back to see if they're back in market? You might have unqualified early interest. This is one that we keep coming back on, or we're seeing a lot of organizations asking about, because as marketing leaders, when you hand off those leads to sales, you really start losing that kind of visibility into how those leads are getting followed up. And sometimes what you might want to be able to do before it hits MQL or whatever your qualification status is that triggers you to hand over to sales, you can actually pre-qualify those leads to determine if they're truly in market or they fit your ICP, right? So having that unqualified early interest is something where you're thinking, am I truly sending something over that is ready, or can I do a little bit more with them to nurture them along to see if they are fitting within my ICP? We all know that we're investing a lot more in virtual events like webinars and kind of the virtual trade shows, but still, are you able to drive as much return out of those investments? And so whether that's driving registrations to those events, and yes, you could be using your existing marketing automation nurture programs to drive people towards those events. But really, when you can drive personalized one-to-one emails, you can get a lot more response back on looking at those folks who are registering. And then once you have the event, how can you follow up with them in a timely manner to drive that next best action, right? So when you load up those leads into your system, and now you're expecting your sales folks to follow up, how long does it take for them to actually start following up? What we have seen is that if you can follow up from those leads that are hitting your system within, an hour of them hitting your system, your engagement rate skyrockets as a result of that. If you're waiting anywhere from another 6 hours, 12 hours, 24, or some people don't follow up for a week, your engagement rates are going to drop right on down because people are going to be moving on to the next topic. So when you think about these pain points, they're huge when you think about those unengaged, unnoticed, and untouched leads. And this is where conversational AI and specifically what you can call conversational marketing comes into play. And remember that conversational marketing is way more than just website chat. Conversational marketing is actually able to tackle more use cases across your top of funnel, across different channels, right? Communication channels, email, chat, SMS, what you need to connect into that buyer. And so turn those uns into dones, right? Attract higher quality leads, be able to use conversational AI to reactivate that dormant demand, be able to cultivate that early interest. In fact, what you can do is you can even ask up to 2 discovery questions, 2 BANT style questions to determine if they're fitting in your ICP. Wouldn't it be nice that if you were able to show and demonstrate kind of those 2 pre-qualification questions already answered before you hand them off to sales, you know you're going to get a higher quality lead, and obviously driving better performance out of all the investment that you're making in those webinar and event programs. So when you think of it as conversational marketing, think of it as omnichannel, think of it as more than just website. It moves across the top of your funnel, supporting more use cases and being able to do that. And when you think about some of the conversation starters that are here, like what do these conversations look like? You know, it's really interesting. We've spent a lot of time here in building out a conversational library. So it's skills and the conversation. So think of skills as the use cases, right? What is the skills experience that I want an AI assistant to have? And then how do we equip it with the right conversations so that it knows what to do based on the scenario at hand? And so we have, you know, over 600 pre-built conversations. That means you do not have to write a single conversation from scratch. They are pre-built for you. And because it's based on conversational AI, real AI, that it can generate all those unique touches for you. You do not have to write them out. Now, what you do have the ability to do is create flexibility in your conversation so that it does have that subject matter expertise on the topic of interest, that it is associated to the right topic. So if you take the very first one here around where it says learn more, right? This is one where you could see here, reaching out, that we've downloaded a white paper. It literally can state what the real title of the white paper is. I wanted to reach out to see if we could answer any questions for you. Can I assist in setting up a call? And then you see best regards and have a good day. Very, very polite, very, very much so, to the point, but then specific to that topic at hand. I think the other thing we talked about, tempo, is unintrusive and well-paced. You can set up the cadences as you like. And we obviously have best practices for what works really well, but you don't want to inundate the inbox, and at the same time, you don't want them to be too dispersed that it loses being top of mind. The other thing is that it's personal and polite. Let's take a look at another example here, right? Hey, the team and I wanted to thank you for registering for our webinar today, how conversational AI can enhance the digital buyer's experience. And I wanted to reach out to see if we could answer any questions you may have, even though you were not able to join live. And this is for folks who registered but could not attend. I don't want you to miss out on the best practices we had to share. Here was a link. Would you care for a link to listen to this on demand? You could also provide the link as well. It just gives you some variability in that conversation, again, coming across very human-like. And it's really about trying to meet that buyer in the moment to help them further move down that journey. And here's a great example of a customer who's using us today. Epson has been with us for a few years, really kind of honing in on the craft of using conversational AI, definitely a thought leader and ahead of their game in driving technology to really bridge the gap here between marketing and sales. And one of the problems that they had is they felt like they didn't have a solid lead follow-up process. They thought that leads were being passed over without that direct pre-qualification, that cultivating that early interest that we were talking about. And then they were also frustrated that they felt like they were having these underworked MQLs that were minimizing that pipeline contribution and also minimizing the ROI on their marketing spend. And so they were able to, apply, obviously, AI assistance. They loaded it up with the right skills between cultivate and having a post-event. They also want to do really good follow-up on their post-event. And take a look at reactivating that dormant demand. And what they were able to see was some really strong payback very quickly. That's the thing. Not all AI requires it to be a science project. In fact, we've spent a lot of time in making sure that you can get an AI assistant in the first phase up and running in just a matter of weeks, and they are trained on day one, ready to go. So they don't need to be trained for your specific business. They are already trained. That's the beauty of building this on our SaaS-based platform. And so within 90 days, Epson themselves were able to see $2 million in revenue sourced by Conversica that easily paid back for the solution and then some. And then they had this ongoing business impact. So they continue to see strong pipeline creation in a single fiscal year. And then the other thing that people are really starting to hone in on is this notion of efficiency gains. You know, we talk about augmenting a workforce of AI and sales teams really working together. And this definitely holds true because the amount of worker productivity gain you get with an AI assistant is just off the charts. So if you were just only using human-powered customer engagement to work these leads, you would not be able to ramp up or get the scale and the level of productivity that an AI assistant can get you. And in this case, it was an additional 12,000 hours work. If you were to do the equivalent, what people would have cost $371,000 of labor costs. What a lot of organizations do here is they take those dollars and they reinvest them in other parts of the sales organization. And then you get the benefits of both worlds. You get that scale and productivity along with continuing to advance and grow those dollars in the other parts of your sales organization. And then there's a data quality impact. Because the AI assistant is interpreting those messages, any net new information that it's finding on the phone numbers, the contact information, it will pull out, take an update into your CRM system. So just a highlight here of a customer that's using us and really seeing a lot of benefit and value in helping to optimize their funnel performance, especially at that top to middle of the funnel. So kind of with that, I think the question is, we covered a lot about marketing and conversational marketing. I think next it's really ready to hand it over to Anne and talk about how can you think about conversational AI in the sales motion and the sales part of the funnel process.
Yeah, Rashmi, thanks. And you and Jesse, I think, have done an excellent job really of setting the stage at the top of the funnel. And so now let's kind of transition to when sales gets involved. But before we do that, let's talk about the state of selling and give you some context around selling. So we know that on average, 25% of direct sales reps only spend 25% of their time on core selling direct engagement activities. So how can we help reps spend more time selling to the right prospects? We also know that high-performing reps spend twice as much time on late-stage activities. So really we're asking, how can we enable or automate the top of the funnel so that reps spend their time crafting the right solution based on the problem being solved and closing? High-performing organizations source 37% of their pipeline from marketing efforts. So how can we tighten the alignment between marketing and sales? And high-performing organizations experience a 26% higher win rate. So how can we increase the likelihood that opportunities will ultimately turn into won and closed business? So let's look at the B2B revenue engine waterfall. And this is our revised, updated version of the waterfall, the demand waterfall. This is now the B2B revenue engine waterfall that we introduced at Summit this year. And as we look at it, we see a tighter alignment between marketing and sales and a more clearly defined relationship between the two. And this was really the main catalyst of Forrester revising the waterfall. But where are the disconnects within the waterfall that typically happen between marketing and sales? And I think what conversational AI can address. So usually it's between, if you look at the engaged side or the INQ, and moving down to detected and prioritized. So if you move from the INQ to the AQL. And then the other disconnect typically happens around the marketing qualified lead, the MQL, and sales accepting the lead. And these are really the two gaps. So how can we automate the process using technology in order to ensure that we are engaging prospects quickly? And as Rashmi's already pointed out, we know that the faster you follow up, the more likelihood you have to convert. Also, effectively following up. So what does your sales engagement cadence look like? We need a disciplined, consistent approach that uses the right modalities in order to engage prospects. And we know that we as human beings can't or won't do this. So according to our ideal customer profile, we're trying to answer these BANT questions, your budget, authority, needs, and timing based on your ICP. And just as an illustrated example of this, I can tell you that when I was selling, I would manually go into my Outlook calendar and try to schedule my outreach and try to remind myself of, what had happened in the last email conversation, or if I got a gatekeeper, what conversation we had had. And by the third or fourth touch, daily fires usurped my outreach efforts. And those opportunities got lost or not followed up on. And then I would close them out as if they weren't qualified. They could have been very qualified leads to marketing when I accepted them, but they got lost. And this is where conversational AI can really help close this gap so that we move opportunities faster through the top of the waterfall into our pipelines. So let's look at what are the 3 causes of underperformance that we typically see within the waterfall. The first one is lack of agreement on lead definition, qualification, and advancement criteria. The second one is lack of agreement on roles, responsibilities throughout the waterfall. And the third one is lack of measurement within the waterfall and creating a feedback loop. So let's move through each one of these. The first one is incomplete data, no phone or email. And this is really, we don't have agreement on what defines a lead, is being qualified, and when it can advance through the waterfall. And very often we don't have the right data we need to have. And as Rashmi said, the conversational AI can update the CRM seamlessly. We may have a duplicate lead. So sometimes things get passed twice and therefore not followed up on. Perhaps they're not approved. It's the wrong industry. It's not the right account. It doesn't fit our ICP. It's an unqualified. It doesn't meet the BANT qualification. Or it could just be misrouted. It's not the right account owner or the right sales rep. And so looking at this first lack of agreement on lead definition, qualification, and advancement criteria, I think Rashmi's going to kind of walk us through how conversational AI can really mitigate this first cause of underperformance.
Yeah, and thanks, Anne. And so, look, nothing can really substitute having a strong marketing operations and sales operations process, right? You still need to go through and make sure you have good hygiene practices in terms of how you think about anywhere from your lead scoring to your routing, and then what is happening in your CRM system, making sure that you don't have duplicate accounts and keeping and understanding your parent-child relationships within your CRM. And there's just still some things on blocking and tackling that you need to have. But just like that, whenever you're adding to it or you're trying to find new information and updating it, whatever solution you're putting in, you want some help to make sure that you can maintain some integrity. And one of the things that AI assistants are good at is that they should be action-oriented and they should care about data quality. And so here's just an example. Like, you can send over the course of a universe, and here's an example of a universe of kind of between a time period. Usually this could be for one instance, it could be 6 months, this could be a year. But let's say you send a universe of a population of contacts, like you're reaching out to some contacts. You could message, let's say 20,000 contacts. Of that, those each contact will receive multiple messages. It could be over 100,000 messages sent. But what you really want to know, and one of the key things that Conversica looks at, is what's the healthiness of those leads? Is that email been verified? Because one of the things that we really want to take a look at and make sure that, one, your emails have high deliverability, so they actually hit your inbox. When we surveyed over 1,000 accounts, what we found was barely 12% of emails actually hit the primary inbox. We have well into the 80s, upper 90s deliverability rates with our emails. Why? Because we go through a very good email verification process. We make sure that those emails are validated, that they hit we have a certain set of criteria before we send, because we do not want emails to not get into the primary inbox. But more importantly, we do not want emails to get in any kind of spam folder or filter. We don't have restrictions on how many emails that we can send. We are scalable for the enterprise, and we can certainly send many thousands and thousands of emails. hundreds of thousands of emails in order to drive that type of cadence and outreach for your business. The next thing is, so that deemed unhealthy, right? We're going to notify and tell you exactly what is unhealthy. Then we'll work with you to try and rectify that, and then we can, you will then have the insight you need to go back to your ops team and say, hey, let's clean these out. These are not good. The second thing in that data quality areas is, you notice, is like phone numbers found, right? Anytime, how many times would you have to go venture to guess when your salespeople are interacting back and forth and they get a new phone number? Where do you think that phone number goes? Probably goes right into their phone. Into their own Rolodex, and doesn't really get back into that CRM system. So this is a great way to really kind of drive that, kind of make sure that that data integrity is solid. And we talked about this, and I'll just highlight it here a little bit again as well, because I think we're going to talk about this a lot more in our second installment of this series. But it's really about your talent, how you can rethink your talent around having AI assistance. And from that point of view is, where can you optimize workforce productivity within your marketing and sales organization? So you're driving effectiveness for sure, because that's super important, but also efficiency, and then being able to free up your budget so that you can have and reallocate that budget for the areas that are, you're going to get a better return on investment. So I think you had a second area where, Anne, you see that there is issues within an underperforming funnel.
Yes. And before I hit the second gap, Rashmi, I just want to really reinforce your point around data quality. I think, any strategy we have around helping sales be more effective, and especially where technology is involved, if you're going to leverage technology, it's only going to be as good as the data that we're collecting and the data within our CRM or Salesforce automation platform. So I know that we all know that, but getting to that place of clean data and constantly be able to clean the data to enable salespeople. And you did make me laugh when you said the phone number went into the salesperson's phone, because that really convicted me. You are correct. And so I just want to reinforce data. I mean, the ability to have your data being constantly scrubbed and cleaned and updated is really powerful. So the second area is lack of agreement on roles, responsibilities throughout the waterfall. And this is really important. As I said, one of the reasons we decided to go back and refresh and update the demand unit waterfall to the B2B revenue waterfall is because we know that the interlock between sales and marketing is critical. And there's always been this kind of tension between sales and marketing around marketing saying, I'm giving you good qualified leads, and sales saying, I'm not getting good qualified leads. And so it's important to look at the waterfall and say, what part of the waterfall is sales responsible for developing? And it's really that qualified stage that we talked about. From a sales accepted lead, I believe that you've met my criteria. I'm going to take this lead, and now I'm going to qualify it. And if we look at what part of the waterfall marketing is responsible for developing, it's in that detected, engaged, prioritized, and qualified stage. So helping a marketing qualified lead, which is where conversational AI can help you, making certain they're very qualified leads that have met the criteria that we in sales and marketing have agreed upon, to a sales accepted lead. And I know, Rashmi, you're going to kind of break out the waterfall and help us see that in a little more detail.
I am. I definitely am. And so what's really funny is that I feel like this is going to be a topic for the ages and generations. I think that's definitely generations before us and then generations moving forward. But I think we can continue to bridge that divide between marketing and sales in terms of what is a lead that sales really will get excited about. I mean, beyond the obvious, contact us or demo request leads, there's a lot of opportunity within the other leads that are getting nurtured through the funnel. And to your point, there's a pretty bold claim to say that marketing should be more responsible from that MQL to SAL, because that means that pre-qualification has to come earlier in that cycle. And so whether we actually truly adopt that, I think using things like conversational AI and some of the examples that I shared can really help you get kind of better traction on that pre-qualification before you hand it off to sales. And so Here though, what I wanted to say is that people might say, okay, well, where within my funnel do I actually apply conversational AI? Like, what are the use cases? And to your point, because now that you've released, like Forrester's released this new revenue engine waterfall that not only takes a look at customer acquisition, but also retention and growth, which I think is so important, because to us, that's the entire revenue funnel, right? How do you go from acquisition on that pre-sales all the way to post-sales? How do you go from that first touch all the way to brand trust and creating advocates within your customer base? And so conversational AI can certainly help and provide that uplift, taking care of a lot of those repetitive routine tasks that either your sales folks or your customer success and account management folks don't like to do or don't do well at all. And here's just some examples, right? So if you have that initially engaged and they've come in with that inquiry or that general interest, you can definitely continue to foster and generate that interest based on those activities that they're coming in on. We talked about the qualifying that early interest using, whether it's I want to learn more and being able to send them the right information, or being able to do those discovery questions up front to pre-qualify. There's other areas here as well. Since we talked about top of funnel, let's focus on that sales part of the funnel, from engaging that inbound demand to see if you can turn those leads into meetings and meetings into opportunity. That's really an important part. And if you're getting flooded, right, if you're getting flooded with thousands, tens of thousands of leads a quarter, thousands of leads a month, and your sales capacity is not able to keep up with that inbound demand, as we most oftentimes see a lot of mid-market and enterprise companies deal with, especially as they ramp up their marketing efforts, then there's a real need to take a look at this, because what's happening is that you're letting a lot of leads fall through the cracks. You're not getting the lead coverage that you're looking for, and then you're ultimately leaving some money on the table. And so the other thing too is a lot of companies today are driving they can be product-led growth organizations, right? Where their product is really driving usage and demand. So how are you, if you have this kind of trial period, or you try before you fully buy, how are you converting them into real business opportunity? We had one of our customers of ours, as you can imagine, last year was in the collaboration space. They had tens of thousands of leads coming in once everybody went into lockdown, because their tools were becoming used. Their free trial downloads went through the roof. They were unable to follow up with that capacity to find business. They had to incorporate AI assistants to do that follow-up, because otherwise, if they had humans alone, they would have had to hire anywhere from 150 to 200 FTEs to follow up with that demand. That's just not even in the realm of possibility. So there's real opportunity here with that convert free trial. And then you could keep on going through. There's the activate and accelerate. I'm going to talk about those two in a second, because I have some great examples there. And then on the right-hand side, those at retention and growth. This is now, once you become a customer, you could onboard them even using conversational AI. Then you could drive that continued help. Use conversational AI to create those touch points for your customers, so they know that you are still delivering that personalized customer engagement. Doesn't have to be only for your strategic accounts. Better actually used against some of those low touch and tech touch accounts that you're probably not reaching out to as much as you should. Use conversational AI to schedule those account reviews. You could use conversational AI to expand product usage. So if you're notifying that your system is saying, hey, this customer's not using the products as much as they can, create that outreach so that you can help them understand that there's opportunities for expanding that product usage. And obviously thinking about how you can use what type of personalized outreach you want to have to try and drive renewals or kick off your renewal program earlier, and then identify those opportunities for expansion. So just know that, again, with conversational AI, you can have the use cases that fit both your acquisition targets across the funnel, as well as your retention and growth needs as you get into that post-sale motion. And so what we had here is kind of okay, well, Rashmi, how does this look and work? Well, how can I use something like conversational AI in sales or conversational sales to kind of accelerate those stalled opportunities? So a great one to look at are those stalled opportunities. Oftentimes you can have somebody coming out to you that, let's say an inbound lead came through, it was very much so something that generated a lot of interest. The rep did the follow-up, but then what happened is that as the rep was following up, there was no response that was coming back. And so what can you do to kind of accelerate that opportunity after sales attempted contact? And this is exactly what you can see here. In this specific case, there was a need to be able to drive, some documentation because they had made an inquiry around a specific type of application. So how can you send out some documentation so that you could close the loop on that process? I think the one below is a little bit more around, okay, I already have a real pipeline opportunity, and I was working and engaging with them. The rep was working and engaging with them, but then they'd gone silent, which sometimes happens. And so you could have been something at like that proposal state, and they went silent. They're not responding back to the rep. You can use conversational AI to try and push that pipeline forward. And so here you can see the example of the rep's name being used, speaking on behalf of the rep. We'd like to see you had a current proposal for, a certain solution. We wanted to ensure that this process is as smooth as possible. Hey, can we get you back on track with the rep to help move this forward? Now, this is time that sure the rep can spend, but if they're not getting any interest back, sometimes you will get good response rate back when you use an AI assistant. You're maintaining that consistent, persistent touch on that pipeline opportunity. And then the other one here is around how can you activate and convert interest. I talked a little bit about that, about if you have that SDR that's reaching out and it's gone silent, you could definitely use an AI assistant to follow up, and then the converting free trials. You could have all your trial users there. You could say, hey, I noticed you previously used our complimentary version. What can we do to get you back with us again? Can we set up a call to see if there's any requirements that we might be able to address for you? So just a couple of scenarios here of where you can use actually conversational AI more in that middle of the funnel to push or accelerate opportunities that have been stalled or have gone silent on you.
Yeah, and I think, Rashmi, just to reiterate some of the points that you were making before we get into this third cause of underperformance, in sales operations where I sit in Forrester, our mission is to help salespeople be more productive, right? To have higher capacity, to have higher yield per sales rep. And so a lot of the things that we've been talking about already, from the tighter alignment between marketing and sales and really helping the leads become more qualified before they get to salespeople with conversational AI, as well as I think what you mentioned, particularly on the back end. So something's gone dormant, opportunity's gone dormant, or it's a retention opportunity. And so we need to continue to drip on that opportunity so when they come back around to the top of the funnel. So salespeople aren't spending their time doing things that really are a function of consistency and discipline, which are not super strengths of most salespeople, right? But they can spend their time on building the relationship and discovery and really uncovering the buying centers and the buying groups and, what are the personal and professional drivers of the buyers and what needs are they trying to solve. And this is where we want salespeople to spend time and allow conversational AI to do the heavy lifting around those other pieces of the waterfall. And so I think that's a great setup into the third cause of underperformance, which is around lack of measurement and the feedback loop. So how do we know that we're doing a good job? How do we know conversational AI is doing what we want it to do? And the first step is, we say this all the time, you've got to inspect what you expect. And the way to do that is you've got to set some metrics. How are we going to define success of what conversational and AI deployment looks like? So some of the metrics that I know that you've used with your clients and that we recommend as well are really around the average response time of an opportunity coming through the funnel and it being responded with or interacted with. Waterfall velocity, how quickly are opportunities moving through each stage of the waterfall? The number of sales accepted leads. The more qualified they are, the more clear we are about the criteria, the more opportunities and leads that salespeople are going to accept and want to develop. Deal velocity. So then logically, if it's more qualified up front, then those opportunities should move through the pipeline more quickly and close more quickly. And we know in our research that actually opportunities and deals are elongating. The time to close them is becoming longer and longer because more and more buying groups and people are involved in the process. So the faster we can qualify and meet criteria, and the faster we can move them through the pipeline. And then the overall pipeline value should be increasing. And the way that we, once you have your metrics defined, then we need to be certain we have a feedback loop set up so that we can collect the data, glean insights, and you're going to hear a lot about insights and actionable insights in the next coming years, because this is really the power of data. It's not just the data, but is what is the data telling us, and what business decisions are we making as a result of those insights. Communicating those outcomes with sales and marketing together, so they're joint stakeholders in this process, and then adjust and apply. So it is this virtuous circle of this feedback loop. And I would really encourage organizations to say, set up a pilot with conversational AI on one side and humans on the other, and see the quality of the metrics that we're telling you to recommend or suggesting that you track. And I think you'll be amazed at the results.
Yeah, I totally agree. And just really quickly here, because I know we're running out of time and we want to field some questions. I mean, if you think about across your funnel from pre-sales to post-sales and applying whether it's conversational marketing at the top of the funnel, conversational sales at that middle, or conversational customer success, you're right. There are a lot of metrics that you could use to look at. I mean, very first and foremost is, are you driving engagement? Are you getting better engagement? If you think of conversational marketing, nurture programs on average get 1 to 3% engagement. And that engagement typically means that you're just opening up the email and clicking on something. For us, engagement means that you're actually responding back. You're getting a response back. And of the total messages that you have, of the total context that you have messaged, how many of those are actually turning hot, meaning that they want to take that next action? And then the days to how it gets to hot. And you can see that if you begin a cadence, and what you're seeing, the metrics here is really based on our 6 months rolling average. Not all the skills and conversations we have here are represented, but and they don't all perform the same. So you can imagine a very early interest. Very, very early interest at the tippy top of the funnel is a different level of engagement than somebody who might be a little bit more further down the funnel. And obviously, if you have existing customers, kind of what that level of engagement is. But as you can see, there are different ways to look at this across the funnel, and you have to gauge within your own organization based on your existing go-to-market where are the areas that you can either drive better coverage that leads to better engagement and or accelerate certain aspects of your of the stages of your funnel. And so I know that was a lot of content that we covered here today. I want to make sure that we have some time to go into some of the questions that have popped up. So for the remaining few minutes that we have here, first and foremost, I want to say thank you on behalf of Forrester and Conversica for everyone today attending today's session. But let's go ahead right now and dive into the Q&A. And for anybody who wants to repeat hearing this session, there will be a recording available, as we said, and we have part 2 coming up on June 10th, where we're going to be diving into actually how this fits into your marketing and sales tech stack. So kind of with that, I'm going to move over here to the question portion and see what we have. Let's take a look. All right. Okay. So some questions here is, do you have to build the workflows into this type of a solution? Or, I think this is more of how much heavy lifting is there? Well, honestly, I think one of the key things here is that not all conversational AI solutions are the same. And one thing that Conversica really prides themselves in is put a lot of time in being able to make sure that we could do a few things very quickly. One, we want to get you up and running in just a couple of weeks. The workflows, let's say how you take those phone numbers and update it into the CRM, those are pre-built workflows. We've got a lot of integrations into the most popular marketing automation and CRM solutions, and we make that really seamless and simple. No, you don't have to build the workflows. They're built for you. Even on website chat, it's very easy to drop and deploy and get it up and running. So this might be one for Jesse. I've heard of conversational marketing, but is that just website chat?
Absolutely not. I cannot say that loud enough. It's so much more than website chat. And thinking back to how we were unpacking those conversational interactions, it all starts with, what does that audience need? So we need to look across the different channels, the different delivery mechanisms that they are already engaged in, and meet them where they are to continue that conversation. The role of chat on the website is just one piece of this. Coming back to that idea of the insights, making sure that that's all connected across all of those interactions, that's where we're really able to bring in that contextual value in that moment, responding right away when the opportunity is there. So absolutely extends well beyond the website. Although as those conversations do take place, we want that latest and greatest thread to be reflected in the content of the conversation that does take place on that website for somebody that's coming back.
Absolutely. Context is important to inform the content and that continuity of conversation. Well, ladies, we're done with our time. We're at the top of the hour. I want to again thank so much Jesse and Ann for joining us today. And I want to thank all of you for attending today's webinar. We hope you have a fantastic day and a great rest of your week. Cheers.
Thank you.
Thank you.